afternoon, everyone. My name is Elham Fardod. As you know, I'm the founder and CEO of the charity Migrant Leaders. I'm so pleased that our mentors and mentees have joined us on what is our first monthly Connect conference in 2026. As you know, our monthly Connect conferences, the purpose is to bring mentors and mentees together and share two or three mentor career stories, which we record and afterwards share with all the 4,500 mentees so that they benefit from your experience and are inspired by how you got into the careers that you have done. Also, I would encourage other mentors to share their anecdotes during the discussions, share their tips for the mentees, and also for the mentees, ask questions. This is your chance to get insights, tips, put yourself forward, introduce yourself. Often you'll find your mentor during the Migrant Leaders Monthly Connect conferences, because if a mentor has met you in person online and you've spoken, then it's very easy for the mentors for you to afterwards connect with them and ask if they would like to select you as a mentee. They can even search for your name on the Migrant Leaders app and ask to connect with you as your mentor. So it's a fantastic opportunity to get yourself the right mentor. So really, really pleased that you've joined us here. Just a recap of what is Migrant Leaders. As you know, we are a registered charity. I launched Migrant Leaders back in 2017 when I was still at EY in finance advisory, working with corporate clients. And 2 years later, I left EY in order to focus full time on Migrant Leaders. And I've been very lucky because I met Fawzia and she has worked with me since then. And then our wider team is now really a fantastic team that we have in order to take what is currently 4,500 young people on our program to having 10,000 young people on our program by the end of 2027, because our program is so good, so robust, so tried and tested, supported by brilliant mentors, 2,000 mentors from 95 FTSE 100 and leading firms. So 2,000 mentors and 25 excellent corporate partners. So we are so well supported that we really need to, as much as possible, expand the wonderful social impact that we have on young people across the UK. So, without further ado, I am delighted to introduce our first speaker, Ananya Agrawal, who works as a lawyer in Clifford Chance, one of the Magic Circle law firms. Anya, over to you.
Thank you so much, Elham. Good evening, everyone. Very wishing you all a very happy new year. And can I just say, I am honored and so pleased to be speaking to you today and sharing my life story or my career journey so far with all of the people on this call today. When people ask me how I ended up here, I usually smile because there's no short answer, only a trail of moments that have shaped me, challenged me, and occasionally surprised me. Today, I'd like to share some of those moments with you. So, to begin with, my name is Ananya Agrawal. I'm currently a trainee solicitor sitting in the M&A department at Clifford Chance, London. I have done my undergrad from the National University of Juridical Sciences in Kolkata. I've studied law, and I would like to give you a brief description of what I've come and what I've become through the life story that I will share with you today. You'll see on the screen, I have combined this one photograph, which I think very well lays out my life story into kind of one picture. Hint, hint, artificial AI had a very big job in helping me put this together. Um, but the reality is that I grew up in Germany, Paris, the UK, and India, which essentially meant that my childhood was a masterclass in cultural diplomacy. I learned to switch languages, accents, snack preferences with an agility that I personally think should be on my CV. I grew up in various different environments amongst various different people who spoke different languages to me, who thought in multiple different ways. And I think what I picked up fairly quickly was the ability to understand that despite the differences that we come from, at, at, at the base, we're all one human. We all have shared experiences, and it's those shared experiences and conversations which make collaboration so much better and so much more efficient. During my teenage years in the UK, I was an enthusiastic student. I wanted to dabble into everything that school had to offer to me. I was one of those students who would actually be quite upset if I missed school on one day, as opposed to, say, my younger brother right now, who has to still be kicked to go to university every single day by my parents. But um, for me, I wanted to try something new and I wanted to achieve something different than what people around me are doing. So my first entrepreneurial adventure happened at the age of 12, when other kids were probably discovering video games and glitter glue. I was, on the other hand, founding an initiative called Young Chambers, which essentially was an initiative where I organized business breakfasts and networking with local businesses in my town, to raise funds for school activities. So while most kids were perhaps collecting, back in our time, Pokemon cards, I was collecting sponsorships for activities to be funded in school. Some might call that very ambitious at the age of 12. My family called it very on brand. Throughout my former years of school, I dabbled into public speaking, debating. I ventured into various different activities, Model United Nation competitions, and by then I had tasted just enough success to think, why stop now? I wanted bigger rooms, I wanted bigger conversations, I wanted a bigger stage. And in my head, the fastest route to that was an MBA. I know that may shock some of you, knowing that right now I'm a lawyer. However, it was an MBA that came to my mind in the first instance. And that shows how much perhaps the lack of conversation around the various different diverse career paths that are available to everyone can shape a young person's mind into thinking what they want to do or what they want to dabble into once they grow up. So fast forward a few years, I was fully ready to pursue an MBA. All of the shenanigans around corporate strategy, financial modeling, PowerPoints, I was ready for that personality shift. I was in India at this time, and in India, to get into any undergraduate law school, undergraduate university, as is the case in most countries, you have to give a very competitive examination, and which is followed by an interview, which is followed by sort of multiple rounds. And as I'm sure a lot of you know, the population game in India, we're no longer thinking competing amongst thousands of people, but in fact, we're thinking competing amongst hundreds and thousands of people to get to these very, very few positions in very prestigious universities in the country. And it's during my time where I was preparing to do my undergrad in kind of business management and administration, um, where, plot twist, I met the law. And it was love at first sight. It was what I was wanting for years on out. It was my love for strategy. It was my love for analysis, of critical analysis, critical thinking, shaped into a very good baseline of what the law means, which is looking at certain rules and regulations, looking at a set of facts and connecting the two, finding novel solutions, novel arguments to your client's problems. Some people at the time said it was a very silly decision. No one in my family had ever done law. No one in my extended family had ever done law. I came from a family of doctors, engineers, of business professionals, and there were a lot of raised eyebrows at the time as to what is law and who does law. But it was my belief in myself and in also the confidence that I had in the passion that I found, that I decided to pursue law. I took a drop year post my A levels. I started preparing for some of the most competitive law schools in India. And during that time, some may call it a sacrifice, but what I called it was determination. I gave up on seeing friends, family, on doing social activities because I was very, very focused. I knew what I wanted, and I was ready to prove everyone around me wrong. Thankfully, things worked out. I ended up at the National University of Juridical Sciences, one of the best law schools in India, and I was ready to make the most of this opportunity. I was like any other enthusiastic law student. Once again, that charm, that love for something that I'm pursuing with passion came back. I dabbled in everything that law school had to offer. I did moots, I did publications, I joined research groups, I was part of committees, I did so many competitions. Basically, if something moved, I joined it. And somewhere between that chaos, my true passion once again emerged, this time in law for negotiation and international mediation. And suddenly, once again, it all clicked. One win led to another. I started off as doing trainings and competitions within my law school, and then was suddenly sent to one of India's best negotiation competitions, the NLS-NMC. Mind you, I'm still a first-year law student at this point. There are many people who are much older to me, much more experienced than me in this competition, but to once again, to everyone's surprise, I won this competition. I was sent to represent India at the international negotiation competition in Tokyo. I was invited then to the signing of the UN, the United Nations Singapore Convention, in back in 2019. I was invited for an internship in Dubai where we were hosting an international mediation competition. I won several arbitration moots during that time in Delhi, and secured special prizes at the world's leading international mediation competition, ICC Paris. And people started referring to it as a streak. Personally, I just called it a world tour, some generously sponsored by Merit scholarships. However, here's the honest part. Even with all of the medals, the titles, the travel, I wasn't happy. There was still something that wasn't being fulfilled. It's not that I wanted more trophies, I just wanted more purpose. And just when I was beginning to realize this at the start of 2020, this is at the end of my sort of second year of law school, COVID hits. All of my international internships that I had lined up gets canceled, travel stops, the competition stop, and suddenly the world comes to a shutdown. This is when I open up a Word document and an idea comes through. The idea being Excuria International. ECI is an international dispute resolution platform which is now present in over 40 different countries. I decided to turn adversity into opportunity. I launched Excuria because through my experiences in all of these different international competitions, I realized that people from across the world have very, very different ideas of what negotiation means to them, of what mediation means to them, of what arbitration means to them. They have very different ideas of what dialogue means to them. And my idea with Excuria was to collect these various different experiences onto one platform, which can then inspire jurisdictions which are very new and initiating ADR policies in their own country to pick up from. What started off as a small blog to collect these ideas soon turned into an international platform with international stalwarts in dispute resolution. I'm talking judges, international mediators, partners at law firm from across the world who were taking a chance on this 20-year-old girl in the middle of COVID, cold emailing a lot of these people. Somehow, miraculously, with a lot of hard work and dedication, once again, ECI worked. We were invited by the United Nations, UNESCO, ICSID, the government of India, to Now, advice on various policy changes that were coming about. We facilitated international negotiation and mediation competitions in Sri Lanka and Nigeria. Again, bringing something that isn't in the jurisdiction, or rather helping bring those experiences to people who may not know so much about ADR. And all of this led to that fulfilling feeling that I was perhaps chasing all of these years. However, once again, this wasn't enough. There was still something out there. There was still something more that I wanted. And at this point, my friends and family kept asking me if I was on track for a Nobel Prize. And I did not want to correct them. Neither do I want to right now. And I let them dream on further. My end of sort of my law school, when we're all thinking about what's next after this, where do we go for a job now? How do we actually earn the money that is required to live in and succeed in life? I once again stopped to think, what is it that I really want? Is it, am I just chasing, am I just chasing sort of empty titles, or am I chasing again, once again, a purpose, something that I'm passionate about, that I wake up with purpose to go and fulfill every single day. And once again, a very impossible looking task stood in front of me. To give you a brief idea, the training contract route in the UK works as a graduate route to get into some of the best law firms in the UK. And we're talking Magic Circle, Silver Circle, US law firms. And these are not firms that typically recruit from international jurisdictions. For me, that was a challenge that everyone around me had tried very hard at, but unfortunately had not succeeded. So I was looking at climbing up this one training contract hill to get into a training program for one of these Magic Circle or US law firms, with actually not having seen anyone around me do it. Once again, faced with the same sort of challenges, once again faced with the same opinions of people around me saying that um, this is not possible. And once again, the same grit and determination of proving myself right, of proving the fact that if I set my mind to it and if I have dreamt it, and if this is what I truly want, global collaboration, then I will work hard enough to get it. Cut short to getting through a lot of interview processes, assessment center processes. And the first one that I got through, I failed at it. I handled it. I handled that rejection like any other normal 21-year-old at the time, which is by declaring that my career is over, by declaring that this is the end of it, all of my dreams and plans and things that I had made after I received this training contract offer, all of that was coming to an end. However, after this 1.5 day of melodrama, as some would call it, I gathered myself. I looked at my application again. I looked back at the skill set and I went into a deep dive as to what is it that I really need to work on. Why is it that out of those 3 interviews, it was that one interview that I couldn't crack properly, and it was the other 2 interviews where I had glorious feedback. It took me about 2.5, 3 months to work on those skills, to work to fill those gaps that I would require in order to put myself in a very good stead for this application cycle. And then I tried again. I applied. I was authentic in my application. I didn't second guess myself. I looked at I spoke to my mentors. I gathered advice and I applied with full faith and belief that this is truly a firm, this is truly a place that offers me what I'm looking for. And to not just everyone's surprise and delight, but to an absolute dream coming true, I got through Clifford Chance, London for their training contract. And in fact, several other training contract offers followed that. And through them, I picked Clifford Chance. So from going into the application cycle, having not seen anyone go through this cycle or get through it successfully, to then standing there with multiple training contract offers in my hand, it was definitely a moment of great pride, great opportunity, and also that ringing belief that if you are relentless in your dreams, if you believe in yourself, nothing is too short, nothing is too far, and you can achieve what you want to achieve. I say that even now, reflecting back into my life and looking to the future, there is so much that is to be done. This is just very much the start. But at the same time, the lessons that I have picked up on the way reinforce the fact that it's also okay to stop and praise yourself once in a while. It's also okay to reflect on your achievements just as much as you reflect on things that pull you down. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to recollect your thoughts, and it's definitely okay to change paths and change interests at any point in your life. Through my years of law school, years before that, there were times where I'd felt personally that I could have done better. But there were people around me who were celebrating me. There were people around me who um, were looking at me with fond eyes, because sometimes we are very harsh to ourselves. And I think through this journey of mine, one thing that I've realized is that you need to be your own cheerleader. You need to believe in yourself and your dreams and your ambition. And that is the main task of moving forward in life. Beyond that, another point that I would really drive home is the power of networking and the power of mentorship. I think if not of all of those international conferences, competitions, of meeting all of those different people from various walks of life, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have collected those ideas that I did. I wouldn't have collected that kind of support that I did, which brought me to many of my achievements today. Therefore, take that time out, reach out to people, cold email people, text them, email them, because I promise out of those 300 emails that you send, 20 people will respond, and it's only those 20 people that you actually need to move forward in life. So I leave you with this. I understand and I agree that my dream is ambitious and I hope to dream. But I leave you with the fact that hope is, dreams may be audacious, but you never stop to hope, for hope is the best thing. Thank you so much. And thank you, Fawzia and Elham, for inviting me here today.
Thank you so much, Ananya. It was a wonderful presentation and testament to your drive from a young age. What a wonderful young lady you were growing up, and you still are. And we look forward to watching your career rise and rise. Thank you so much. And also thank you for being a Migrant Leaders Mentor.
Thank
So
you.
with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Faith Ruto. But before I do that, I'm going to introduce Faith as an executive coach extraordinaire, because she's got extensive experience of coaching executives, and with an executive MBA from none other than Imperial College. I am so curious to hear about Faith's career story. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, what an amazing journey. I could listen to, your journey for a long time, but how do I follow that, right? So everybody's very quiet. I'm a very talkative person. I'm going to be talking a lot, and I want you to talk back if that's okay with you. So please use the chat, use the expression emoji, ask questions. This is as much as your session as our session to share our journey. So where do I begin? I'm originally from Uganda. I'm sure most of you have been asked, or your parents have been asked, where are you from, really from? And I always like to go from the origin. So I'm from northern Uganda, which is in East Africa. And my mom decided that she wanted a better life for herself and her four children, and brought us to the UK. I remember coming to UK, it was October, it was cold, it was freezing. And my first reaction to my mom was like, why are we here? And she thought I was a very ungrateful teenager. I'm sure some of you can identify with, just expressing your view and your opinion. So growing up in Uganda was beautiful. I grew up in northern Uganda, a small village. We had no running water, no electricity. If we wanted fruit, we got it from a mango tree. If we wanted water, the girls went and fetched water, and the boys, I don't know what the boys were doing. They always seemed to be having fun, but the girls were always busy, either cooking or cleaning or getting water or doing something. So a sense of responsibility from a very young age. And then war broke out. So finally, we couldn't live in our village. There was a lot of kidnapping going on. So we moved, I would say from primary four. I remember being in class one morning and then we were told you have to run. And then, you run for a few months and then come back to the same classroom or you'd go to another school. So schooling, even though I really love being at school, it was never straightforward for me. I want to give you that backdrop because it tells you why education became so important to me, even when I came to the UK. So going to school was a novelty. Was something that I loved doing. So coming back to the UK in 93, arriving in the UK was cold. We lived in a council flat. Showing you what the council flat looked like back in those days. And I say those days because I'm a bit older than most of you here. If you were in a council flat, it meant, you were on social housing. Your parents didn't have much. If we wanted new clothing, it was from a secondhand shop. Not that we complained, you just embraced it. I remember helping my mom, trying to make money from the age of 14, getting small jobs to make sure that, my mom, who was a nurse, we had enough electricity. So, it was, I would say, what we call now cost of living. It was, it wasn't easy. Seeing my mom struggling, was not easy. And that became my motivation to want to do really well in my education. So I saw education not just as something that was a novelty, it was a necessity. So no one had to ask me to go to school in the morning. No one had to ask me to leave the library. At my lunchtime, I spent all my time, in the library, which was great because sometimes I was bullied. So I had to run and hide in the library. And those that were bullying me didn't really like, reading books that much. So they left me alone. So fast forward, so arriving in the UK and going from imagine arriving, in the UK, your education has been disrupted. You speak very little English for that matter, and you're put in year nine, right? And some of you probably, know year nine, that's when you start thinking about your GCSEs. And for me, I didn't even know what GCSE was. I didn't know what college was. I didn't know what the structure of education was in the UK. But I was just determined to do really well, right? That was drummed into me. And most African, and I would say, most, non-British family of immigrants, education is so important to us. It's a pride for your parents, to know that you've had a good education is what they've sacrificed, why they've come here or move countries, is to offer you a better life. So for me, I was just determined. So I found out that I had to do GCSEs when I was in year 10, choosing my subjects. Sorry, in year nine, right? Year nine, you choose your GCSEs. And I remember choosing all my subjects and I wanted to do acting. I thought I would be a good actor. And then during, work placement, I did a bit of work experience at a theater and I didn't really enjoy it because I spent all my time making tea and coffee. So I thought, okay, no acting for me. I'm going to work in an office. I like dressing up, in a suit, power suit. And that was really good. I now had an image of what I could be in the future. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew that, when I'm older, I'm going to work in an office and I'm going to do a lot of traveling. So I did my A levels. I chose English. Actually, before I did my A level, my teacher said I was going to fail. So that's another thing that I want to share with you is that people will underestimate you because it could be your appearance or it could be your, how you speak or your religion. That is okay, but you can't underestimate yourself. You gotta know yourself and you gotta have really high self-worth. So for me, my teacher told me you're gonna fail English because it's your second language. You don't even speak it that well anyway. But I was thinking, okay, you wait and see. And I actually got to be in English. So I was like, okay, I can do anything. I can actually now do anything. So I had that instinct I studied business and IT at university because I wasn't sure what I wanted to study. Right. So some of you are at that age now where people are asking you, what do you want to be? What do you want to study? And it's really stressful because, you don't know. No one even know. I didn't know. So when I came time to applying for university, I chose three business studies courses three IT courses. And I remember I wanted to go as far away from my mom and my brothers as possible. So I was applying to Manchester, Edinburgh, and all these universities far, far away. But actually, when the time came, I thought actually I can't really leave my mom and my brothers. So I applied to Kingston University, and there, it was the admission team that called me and said, "Look, we can see that you've applied for computer science and business studies. Clearly, you don't know what you want to do. But we have a course that has combined the two." So that really helped me, right? Because at that point, I thought, yes, I can do this. So I chose a course that went for 4 years. And at Kingston University, I had 1 year to work at British Airways, which again is super important. If you have an opportunity to do an internship, even if it's for free, please do it. If you have Saturday, for 1 hour, go and work at a charity shop. Get some valuable work experience, even if it's got nothing related to what you want to be in the future. Just get out there and get some experience. Because for me, working for British Airways, it was the best thing ever. I was in the head office. I was treated like a normal employee. And the reason why I put this emoji of a table is, there wasn't like a ranking like, okay, you're too young or you're not, they treated me like I was a fully qualified person. So that from that moment on, I had that mindset that no one will put me down or below where I shouldn't be, I belong there. So this whole question about do I belong, or, that sense of belonging, some of it is to do with ourselves, how we put ourselves in situations. So for me, I was determined to say, oh, you know what? I've worked really hard. I'm still learning. I don't know everything, but I'm going to put myself on the same level. I won't be putting myself below, because when you do that, you're going to try and catch up, and you really just cannot. You can't compete with people's experience. You can't compete with people's, background, whether because they've come from money or from, better education. You can't. So the most important thing is you can do is, have the self-compassion and kindness. After British Airways, I was offered a job, but unfortunately there was 9/11, so they were not recruiting anymore. So now I went back to uni saying, "Oh, I've got a job," to like, oh, now I don't have a job. What on earth do I do? And I remember spending my summer, you know, um, in the library, because remember there was no computer, right? So this is, 2002, right? So 2002, there was no like handheld, tablet or whatever. I had to physically go into a library to apply for these jobs, right? So I applied for one of their grad job, which was a Shell, and they had 2,000 people. It was shortlisted to 40. We had to go through like intensive assessment center. And I remember sitting in a room with, candidates from Oxford University, Cambridge University, and there was little old me from Kingston University. And I just remember, I'm not gonna get this job. There's no way I'm gonna get the job. So when I finally got in, they said, okay, why should we give you the job? And I thought to myself, well, why not? You know, I really want this job. I really want to work for your company. I really want to travel. I can see I can make a difference. And then based on that, they said, okay, fine, we'll offer you the job. So I had 12 years at Shell, where I led global projects. I worked in Germany. I worked, in all the airports across Europe. I've been to them, because again, back in those days, you have to physically upgrade your software, on a PC. There was nothing like cloud computing or remote, control, anything. You had to physically travel, right? So I've been to all the airports across Europe, upgraded their IT systems. And then at some point I decided, you know what, I want to now go back to university and study MBA. And at first the company said, oh yeah, we'll sponsor you, because we're actually trying to advance, women in the organization. We need more leaders that are diverse. But after 2 or 3 years of asking and proving myself and not getting the sponsorship, I just, I had a mentor who told me, said, well, Faith, if you want to do these studies, why don't you fund it yourself? And I thought, well, where am I going to get £40,000 to pay for an MBA? Then he said, well, go to the bank, ask the bank, maybe they can lend you the money. And there was a NatWest, funding for further education. And that's what I did. So when I went to Imperial, arrived there thinking, okay, I'm nearly 30. I've just newly married. I'm planning to have a family, and I want to get these studies out of my way, right? So that was my plan. So that's exactly what I did. So at the end of my MBA, which was for 2 years, I was still working full time. I was heavily pregnant, and I finished my MBA, and I had my baby and all that stuff. So And then I took a year out. I went back to work. I was promoted to another role, completely different from what I was doing. So now I moved from IT to marketing. And the reason why I did that was I recognized that my talent or my abilities with people. Yes, I love systems, but I'm a people person. So what that basically means is that you need to discover what is your key strength and play to that. Okay. So if somebody wants you to be like my mom wanted me to be a doctor because it sounds really good. My daughter is a doctor. I don't like I don't like blood. I don't like being in a hospital environment, right? I don't even like tablets. So how on earth am I going to be a good doctor? And I couldn't see it. So one of the things I can, advice I can give you is that quickly discover what you're good at, right? What are your talents? What do people tell you you're good at? There's lots of different tests you can do online to show you your strength. Your career office might even give you some of this advice, right? They might tell you, that try this test and find out what is your personality like. What is are you someone who like working with their hands? Or are you somebody who like, studying? So discover your strength because that's going to be the key for you. So when I went back to Shell after my first baby, I worked in marketing. I was given another big role again. And I was really, thriving, but something was missing, right? My sense of purpose, my sense of impact. I was doing a lot of voluntary work, coaching and mentoring. But my day job was there, but it wasn't what was making me wake up in the morning. So in 2015, I had this, idea for a business, and that's what led me to leaving the organization. So I founded, Transformation 21st, which is the company I've been running for 11 years now. And I partner with organizations, HSBC, PwC, even Shell, AstraZeneca, and I deliver coaching to their leaders, to their women, to diverse staff. So in a day when D&I, diversity, inclusion, equity, inclusion is a big thing. I've gone out in organizations and deliver targeted, coaching programs and mentoring programs because again, recognize that everyone is different. We're all unique, right? And when you work in an organization where you don't see people that look like you or sound like you, it can affect your self-confidence and your self-worth. So for me, knowing how I felt being in a global organization and speaking to various people from different backgrounds, it's been, for me, a superpower because I can relate to people and I can help, people break barriers that they face in their careers. So that's what I've been doing. And obviously a lot of traveling. On top of that, I have written a book called Transform Within. Again, the idea of the book came to me because people kept saying, Faith, your story is really inspiring. How did you get to where you got to? So in the book, I try to share a bit of my, my recipe for success. And it's some of those what I've written here is what I've learned in that journey. I've also done a TED talk, sorry, a TEDx talk, which again is about, once you become a coach, then okay, now what's next? What's next, right? So it's about always aiming high and always having that dream. So what have I learned then, in all the things that I've done? And there's just so much I couldn't pack in here. I've also volunteered as a UN, UK, sorry, UN Women UK participants, where, I champion girls and women equality globally. So there's been a lot of stuff that I do on top of my, my role as a wife and a mother and running my company. But one of the things I want to leave with you is what I've learned. Believe in yourself. Okay. I know it's not easy, but just practice positive self-talk, right? Set SMART goals. So SMART is basically be very specific about your goals. Make sure that you can measure your goals. Make sure that it's achievable and it's realistic and that it's time bound. Okay. Yes, you might want to be an astronaut, but to get to being an astronaut, you might need to get the A-level sciences. You might need to, go to a good university or do good internship. So, make good connections. So try and be really specific with your goals. And then, ask for help. That's what we're here for. Just find people, create a LinkedIn profile if you're old enough and you feel confident enough to do that. You know, Start making connections. There's a lot of workshops and conferences in London that, you can attend as a student for free, right? Start thinking about that. Step outside your comfort zone, right? It would be very easy for me to just stick with my Ugandan friends and family or to join an African network, but the world is big and it's global and international. So try and see whether you can find like-minded individuals that you can connect with. Prioritize your health. That is something that no one told me. So I had to, because I was so driven, I was burning out often. So try and learn how to, look after your health, whether that's your fitness, whether that's, your faith, if you have faith, just small things like that can actually impact your well-being. And keep learning. Learning is for life. You never stop. And then for me, what has been really central to me has been my family, it's been my faith, it's been being resilient. So great. I wanted that, I didn't get it. Fine. I've learned from that, I move on. And then be positive. Right now, the world is full of negativity. Be that positive light. And then finally, my most recent, I guess, achievement is being named UK Top 50 Leading Light. And that for me is, if I've done nothing else in this world, I have been a leading light. And I'm hoping that you can all be a leading light in your own way. I think that's the end. Otherwise, I can just carry on, Pfizer. So thank you for listening, and please ask me questions.
Faith, that was wonderful. A story of hope and adventure.
Mm.
I love that you were a female in tech from an African nation with the background that you described. I know how difficult it would have been in 2002. So
Mm.
really, my hat off to you and congratulations on everything you've achieved. Thank you so much. We've got 15 minutes, which is great. 15 minutes for questions. I can see a few questions in the chat already. Mohammed, would you like to field the questions in the chat? Mentees can also speak up if they have a question. Put your hands up digitally and we'll come to you. But in the meantime, Mohammed, would you like to read out some of the questions in the chat?
Thank you, Alham. Thank you, Nania and Faith. It was very inspiring to listen to your stories. In fact, the element of hope from Anania and believing yourself from Faith, very inspiring. So thank you for sharing it with us. I have received some questions. So the first one is for you, Anania. So if you were advising an A-level student today who wants to become a solicitor, what subjects, experience, or habits would you recommend starting early?
Thank you. That's a great question. I personally think that subjects like political science, history, legal studies, sort of international uh, geography, English, obviously doing the law itself at university, all of these things are very helpful. But also at the same time, I do want to share that I personally studied science during my A levels. So I studied physics, chemistry, math, further math for my A levels, and I was preparing to become an engineer, and then pursue my MBA. So I studied something completely different and then went into law. And you'll be very happy to hear that law firms in the UK, in fact, recruit from non-law backgrounds heavily. So 50% of our cohort is actually non-law. So my friends in my cohort right now at Clifford Chance and many other Magic Circle firms actually come from completely non-law backgrounds. So you could pretty much study whatever you want um, for your undergrad degree or for your A levels to get into these positions that we are talking about today. I would suggest whatever it is that you do, think about transferable skills. Think about skills that you can actually pick up and put into a career of law. So take a step back, think about what it means to be a lawyer. Think about the kind of skills that are appreciated and valued in this field. So we're talking, if from the top of my head, commercial awareness, we're talking attention to detail, we're talking critical analysis. If you enjoy these skills, problem solving, if you enjoy these skills, and that could be in a math question versus in analyzing an English literature text, right? Um, then you are set to be on this path because you can talk about your experiences and you can talk about the transferable skills that come into that you can bring into this field. But in order for like a shorter answer on what you should be doing right now, I completely agree with Faith when she says go out and get whatever experience you can. It is so important to go and get real life experience because there's only so much that textbooks and law school and any thing that you read can teach you. It's that practical experience of even going and being a barista at a local coffee shop, or working at a supermarket, volunteering for charity. All of these experiences are going to bring such a wealth of qualities and skills inside you that you don't realize are going to be so, so helpful when you go ahead and apply to these apprentice positions or for training contracts or for any other position in law. I hope that helps, but if you have any follow-ups, please do feel free to ask.
Thank you for that. And then, yeah, we have loads of questions, so I'll go in order. So, Faith, the next one is for you. I think students want to benefit from your coaching expertise here. So, it's about imposter syndrome. So, many students from underrepresented backgrounds are suffering from imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
What practical advice would you give them?
So, gosh, it's normal and it's okay, right? It's not something that you should try and just remove it, that it doesn't exist. It's for a reason, and sit with that feeling and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Right? Is it because I'm comparing myself with others? Is it because I am assuming that I'm lacking something? Where is this coming from? I'll give you an example. At university, I've always been talkative. I think I was born talking anyway, but that's another story. I talk with confidence. I got into work, and that idea of I'm the only black person here, I'm the only female in tech, the voice started telling me that don't talk up in meeting because you're just going to say something stupid. You're not experienced enough, you're too young, right? They just started like, no one was telling me this. I just started believing things. So the first task I would say to anyone who suffer from imposter syndrome is that imposter syndrome is a sign that you are growing outside your comfort zone. Okay. So that's a one thing, because if you don't have imposter syndrome, it means that you're comfortable, which is not a bad thing either. But try and look at imposter syndrome as a signal. It's a human signal saying to you that, you know what, you are trying to do something that is making you feel uncomfortable. And, turn that around, try and say, okay, if I feel like it's my accent every time I speak, what can I do about this? Right. So like I told you guys, I could not speak English really well at all, like honestly, right? I just had to practice, but I also had to tell myself that it was okay because I could speak my mother tongue. Like all of you probably speak other languages beautifully than other people, right? So the key here isn't to try and say, compare yourself with other people. It's just to adapt a growth mindset, which basically says you're not there yet, or you will become better. Okay. So if don't allow imposter syndrome to stop you from getting to your goal. That's a key thing. It's okay to feel it. It's okay to have positive affirmation. So maybe say to yourself, I am a confident person. I am going to become confident. I am getting better. Practice. If it's a skill that you're lacking, practice with somebody. It's like riding a bike. Once you learn it, you won't forget it. But you got to take the first step. Don't just make excuse for yourself, okay? You have to be your biggest cheerleader, like Anya said earlier. You've got to believe in yourself.
Thank you, Faith. We've got Sasha raising his hand. Sasha, please do go ahead.
Hi everyone.
Right.
Thank you both for sharing your stories. I think it really shows and pays the tribute to the power of resilience and believing in what you want to do. Yeah, I think it was really, really impactful. I had a question for Ananya about what does your day-to-day schedule look like as a lawyer, trainee solicitor, and what do you enjoy about your job?
Thanks, Sasha. That's a very good question. For me, right now, I'm sitting in the M&E team, which is the mergers and acquisitions department within corporate. M&E typically is a fairly busy team. So my day to day would look something like starting with maybe a morning meeting with the team, with the transaction that I'm working on, collating sort of tasks that I need to do through the day, responding to emails that I've received, and then kind of deep diving into some of the tasks that I've been given. So to give you an example, that could look like due diligence. We could receive a lot of documents on a particular merger or acquisition that we're advising on. And our job as lawyers would be to review those documents, to identify red flags as to why, say, two companies shouldn't or should merge together, or what are the risks that our client faces if they were to go ahead and merge with the other company, or buy or sell to the other company. So that's one of those tasks. You would also have various different sort of reviewing documents, drafting documents. You would have various kind of conferences and things that keep going on within the law firm that you would partake in. And there are various kind of check-ins and meetings that happen throughout the day that you would attend. You would also do pro bono work. Like, for instance, you would find time to mentor younger students, for example, with migrant leaders. You would come in and do other pro bono tasks, like, for example, go to court, represent vulnerable people. And it's all sort of a mixed bag of very interesting things. But I can say one thing. My no 2 days look the same. So every single day I'm doing something very different, very challenging, very exciting. But I do have to caveat that with the fact that the hours are very, very long. It's not something that you do just in your 9 to 5 kind of a job, but you are expected to put in your best and put in your most. And the people are lovely to work with. So in fact, if anything, if you're doing it with the true interest and passion, you will love your job as well.
I think it's worth adding, Sasha, and all mentees, that when we say medicine or law are like this with the very long hours the first few years in your career, that applies to most technical fields, whether it is engineering, medicine, finance, law. I can vouch for that. The first 10 years in my career, working in GE, I had a silly target. I wanted to be a finance director by the time I was 30. So for that, I knew that I've got to do my chartered accounting, become a financial controller at GE by 25, get onto the leadership programs, do an exec MBA during the weekends and evenings. It's grueling. It is grueling. But then you have to think of it in terms of today's graduate premiums. There's a lot of talk about getting a degree no longer gives you much of a graduate premium compared to if you didn't have a degree. So why take on the loans? But if you look at the top 5 careers that I've just named, their graduate premiums are intact over your lifetime and even as a starting points. Many of these fields that we've mentioned give you around 1.5 or double starting salaries as a graduate compared to overall graduate salaries across the UK, double. So there's a purpose to all this hard work, but of course you've got to be determined and you've got to want it. In order to be resilient, it's got to be something you really want.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Alham. Faith, we're coming back to yourself. So the next question is, you've spoken very openly about leaving Uganda during war. How did those early experiences shape your ambition and mindset?
Oh gosh. I think for me, it helped me my mindset to be able to deal with adversity and remember that nothing is permanent, right? So if you're having a bad day or you're having a bad phase, or it's not gonna last forever, right? And to keep the faith in terms of hope, to be positive, to focus on what you can control. There are things that are outside your control. So, for example, me liking school and then there's being a war and having to run and hide in the bushes and all these things. Um, the only thing I could control was my reaction and my response. So a lot of my mindset, what I believed when I was younger has been confirmed by, like Professor at Stanford when he talks about the growth mindset and, how to deal with adversity. These are things that from my own experiences, protect your mindset, protect your attitude. There are just so many, it feels like I'm giving you lots of advice, but these are things like just so simple, but we just don't put it into practice. So for me, it's just as much as you're taking advice from other people, sit with yourself and just think for yourself and just remind yourself all the adversity that you may be facing now or have faced in your life is equipping you for your resilience in the future, right? That's the most important thing, is that where you've come from or where you are now is not going to be where you're going to end up in the future. And that's why it's very important for me to always look forward, because if I continue looking at, looking back, literally I'll be like a wreck with trauma, a wreck with all sorts of, issues. But I'm grateful because of that, it gave me the push, the determination, and also, like the self-service that I have, the desire I have to be helping others. Like I wish I had someone like me in, when I was back then. And that's why I want to be a part of this, because I can see, the younger me, in some of you, like the frustration, the limitation. And so therefore I would say, let where you've come from be your motivator, and don't worry about figuring everything out. I am coaching people in their 50s. They have no clue what they want to do with their future. They're in their 50s. I'm coaching people who are retiring. They have no clue. So don't let any adult fool you into saying, you gotta figure it out. Why not, you're not going to university? And again, because the cultural difference between you and your parents and where they've come from, there's going to be a friction. So I had a friction with my mom, not because she was a bad mother, but it was just because the environment here is different from where she grew up. In Africa, your mom says something, they don't even say anything. They look at you, you react and you listen. I mean, I've got my children. I've got a teenager who's 15, and she's telling me, "Oh, you're taking me to London." I'm like, "What do you mean? I have a day job. I'm taking you to London. Like, what is this? I'm not, But she's actually just being assertive. So one of your barriers or challenges is going to be how you manage your parents or your guardians, and you know just look at them with love and just remind yourself that they're coming from a place of caring. And yeah, so just don't be too hard on yourself. Yeah, things are changing so quick. If I can give you with one advice, try not to go to bed with worries. Yeah, have a notebook, write things down. I know you have your phone, but physically write your worries down. Go for a walk if you're feeling overloaded. Talk to people. The more you talk to people, the more ideas you'll get, and the more clarity you're gonna get. And it's okay, like we've talked. You can go a wrong path. No one's gonna die. You just learn, you pick yourself up, and you keep moving forward.
Wonderful, wonderful lesson in resilience, Faith. Thank you so much. And everyone, migrant leaders, mentors, mentees, um, we actually have another session at 6 p.m. So I'm gonna, if that's all right, leave it there. It's been a fantastically interactive session today. Thank you, everyone, mentees for asking questions, migrant leaders, mentors, Faith, Ananya, Mohammed, Fozia, everyone, thank you. And we look forward to sharing the recording with you. And see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Happy New
Thank
Year.
you.
Bye.